Could you tell me a bit about what motivated you to start Wikipedia, when it started?
So I've been watching the growth of free software, or open source software as most people know it, and seeing programmers coming together all around the world collaborating to build all the really great software that runs the internet. So, GNU Linux, Apache, Perl, MySQL, PHP, all of these fundamental software tools that people were using to build the web were all open source projects, largely written by volunteers. And it started me to thinking, what else could be built in this way? We've got this great new opportunity of an internet that people can communicate on. What else could we build? And I hit upon the idea of the encyclopedia, that we could bring people together and give a free encyclopedia to every single person on the planet in their own language. Got very excited about that idea, and well, here we are today.
Well, and when was that?
Originally in 1999 was when I had the original concept. Started a site called Nupedia, which was the same vision, but had a very top-down editorial command and control structure, very academic and very old-fashioned. That didn't work out, and instead we transitioned radically to the wiki model, and made everything as open as possible for as long as possible, and that was, we got more work done in 2 weeks than we had done in almost 2 years, so that we knew we were onto something.
And was the not-for-profit part of that baked in from the start then, or was
no,
that something you realised you needed?
I put it into the nonprofit in 2003. Project had been around for a couple of years at that point. It was something that it was just a project. I didn't think of it as necessarily for-profit, nonprofit. I didn't know how we would fund it in the long run. And as it was emerging, it made sense. So the volunteers really wanted it to be in the nonprofit. I didn't want to have advertising if we could find a way around it. So donations seemed like a viable model. So put it into the nonprofit and did our first fundraiser, which was very successful. And well, again, here we are today.
Yeah. And it still raises funds in that same way, donations only in a sense.
All based on donations.
Yeah.
The vast majority of the money is from the small donors, so people giving, £30, that kind of donation. We have some larger donors, of course, and we have some grants from philanthropic foundations, but still the backbone, the largest chunk of money by a very wide margin is the small donors.
And of course, the other part of that is the amount of time and effort that comes in that you don't pay for from the volunteers.
Yeah, of course, yeah. The community who take care for Wikipedia and look after it and grow it and monitor it and so on. That's also, we couldn't do without it, obviously.
And I read, I think that something like about 1,500 people every week are doing something really quite significant. 10% of the numbers of people who are doing something are actually doing a lot.
Yeah.
Are you surprised at how successful the self-governing sort of model is? I can imagine all the recipe for disaster you could come up with would include 1,500 people.
It's non-trivial,
yes.
And the community governance model is complicated and so on. But in a certain sense, it's we're not surprised that. The UK functions more or less. It's a democracy. It's, we're self-governing, and all of us are on this planet, That doesn't mean it's easy, and it doesn't mean it always goes smoothly, but in general, you can find ways to do it. I think if people imagine Wikipedia as an anarchy with no rules, and that somehow magically an encyclopedia emerges, well, that's a great mystery, but it's also false. That in fact, we do have rules, and we have administrative structures within the community, elected positions and things like that. So it is, not an anarchy.
Yeah. And in terms of the motivation of the people involved and the people you know and the people you meet and hear from, what sort of things would you say about their motivation? What motivates them to do what they do?
Yeah, I think it's two things. So first, imagine a world in which every single person on the planet is given free access to the sum of all human knowledge. That's what we're doing. So that's our vision statement, which is very exciting. I mean, it's a big thing, and if you're going to spend time on a hobby, you might as well be doing something that's sort of historic and important, and that is meaningful to people. But that's not enough. I think, there's lots of things that could be historic and important, but that, they're just not very fun, and so people wouldn't do them. It's also fun. People enjoy the process of editing Wikipedia. They meet other smart people who they agree with, disagree with, argue with, but in a constructive way. It's an intellectual hobby that people really like and get really passionate about. And so I think it's those two things. It's fun with a purpose is really what makes the community work. I think some of the values of the Wikipedia community are quite universal. The values of good quality, neutral information is something that's sought after everywhere. The values of kindness and thoughtfulness in the community. Sometimes there's local norms that are slightly different. Japanese people are much more formal, for example, but still, at the end of the day, the fundamentals end up being pretty much the same. Yeah. A few years ago, I formulated it in a more precise way to say, I want to have at least 250,000 entries in every language that has at least 1 million native speakers. Because, people say, well, every language, what about the language that only has 3 speakers? Well, we probably won't be able to write an encyclopedia for them, but 1 million speakers we can do. We have some small languages like that have been very successful. And that's about 330 languages, depending on how you count. We're a long way from that. We actually sort of, in the languages of the developing world, there's a long way to go. In the smaller languages, in particular the smaller languages of Africa, there's a lot of work to be done. But in the larger languages, in the European languages, in Chinese and Japanese, we've come quite a long way towards that goal.
And what do you think's in that gap? I mean, what's going to happen next? Do you need more of something, or is it just time? Yeah. Is it just time that?
No, it's a bit of more of. It's time. It's so one of the big issues, of course, is access to the internet. If you've got 1 million people and only 20,000 of them have access to the internet, and they all also speak another language and so on, it's hard to get started. So, in due course, the next 1 billion people are coming online faster than anybody thought they would. We're seeing the rise of very inexpensive tablets and smartphones. Those are going to have a huge impact in terms of reaching the next layer down in terms of economic access to the internet. That's going to have a big impact. We have a lot of outreach to do, a lot of, in some cases, technical work to do to make sure that we support various languages. That's not so much true in Africa. It's pretty straightforward as they use English alphabet for the most part. But in India, there's a lot of keyboard entry issues and things like that. So there's a lot of work to be done all around the world.
Does the underneath, the technology is holding it together, the servers and all the other bits, and has that got to change as well to achieve this? I mean, is it sort of scalable or?
Yeah, no, I mean, there are things that have to change. So the scalability is not really the issue. One of the things that we know is that we need to update the editing environment to make it easier for people to participate, and that's quite critical, and that impacts all the languages. And then, there's always questions about like server response time. So one of the things we know is that in some parts of the world, it takes much too long to save a page because the servers are too far away. So we need to co-locate servers closer. That involves a lot of complications, not least of which are legal complications. Right. You can't exactly put servers in China because the only way to do that is to agree to Chinese censorship laws, which we will refuse to do. So there's a lot of questions, things we have to be careful about.
Which is making it sound like it's going to be a slow but steady progress rather than a great leap. They don't see that I think so, in terms of that goal.
Yeah, I think so, but I do think that there are some big leaps happening faster than people realize in terms of internet access. Yes. You can find predictions from a few years ago of, when will smartphones become big in Africa, and you realize today, actually, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, we were probably 2 years too conservative. That in fact is coming really fast, much faster than people realized, and I think that's going to have some sharp impacts. I mean, if you look at the percentage of people who have access to the internet in various countries. A lot of places in the developing world are experiencing what we all experienced in the late 90s of sort of skyrocketing access to the internet, skyrocketing participation. It's coming to them now, and that's a very exciting time, obviously.
And that's also perhaps to do with a question to do with the difference between people consuming the content and creating the content.
Yeah.
How much of those two things drives you in the sense of overall picture?
They both are critical. I would say we focus more attention on the creation because if we don't create it, they can't consume it. So that's really core. But we do worry. We think about technical infrastructure issues, making sure page loads are fast and things like that, making sure that people can get access. But for us, I would say more software is needed and more work is needed to support the community, the editing community.
And on the same score then, it's text-based, and as opposed to video, for example, or audio. Yeah. Is that's the direction of travel as well? That's not going to change?
Yeah, that won't change. I mean, I think that there is room for a bit more video, and we always love it when people contribute high-quality photos and things and illustrations and things like that. Those are important, but not important in the sense of changing the overall nature of the product. An encyclopedia is text, and that's fine. There's other things. There's not a lot of demand from the community for video. It's really hard to collaboratively edit video. So if somebody posts a video and I think, oh, there's an error there, or they should have done this differently, well, there's not much you can do about it after the fact. Whereas with text, you can write some text and say, oh, look, I can add to that, or I see a mistake you made, or I see a way that could be better phrased, and we can have a dialogue about that. And text is very fluid in that sense, and so it's easy to continuously improve text. So I think that's the nature, and most of the topics in an encyclopedia, text is really ideal. Audio, now, in terms of for accessibility, making sure that that screen reader software works well with Wikipedia, that's something that's always a nagging problem because it's so easy to change something that breaks people's screen readers and they complain and you have to fix it again. But we try really hard to be as accessible as we can.
Turning to Tech4Good, I was trying to think of a couple of examples that would sit up alongside Wikipedia. I was thinking of Mozilla, not-for-profit, tech-driven, global. Do you have examples that you sort of place yourself alongside?
I've never think about that question. No. We're so absorbed in doing what we do that we don't really compare ourselves. I think if you think in a broader way, I don't know of any other organizations quite like us or quite like Mozilla, but there is a broader movement or spirit on the internet of the users of the internet. So, while YouTube is a commercial platform, a great mass of content on YouTube is not commercial. It's just people sharing knowledge. I was just reading about music editing software, so creating music. And apparently there's hundreds and hundreds of videos on YouTube explaining details of how to do it. And so you can go, if you have the software and you say, I want to learn how to make music using the software, there's an enormous amount of free educational material that people have just posted because it's their hobby and they love it. And so that spirit is the spirit of Wikipedia, that I know something and I would love to share it. Looking
ahead, I know you've been advising the government, UK government for example. What sort of lessons do you think there are about the way that tech can be used for good, social good, either stuff that you've learned through Wikipedia or just generally the important lessons?
I think that one of the most important lessons of Wikipedia is that there's an enormous amount of goodwill out there in the community. And so when we think about designing projects for good, we should be designing around that goodwill, around the good people, not designing around the very tiny minority of people who are troublemakers. Right. And that's a big mistake I see people making. They first start out thinking, what could the bad people do? Let's design a system around that to stop them from doing the bad. But in the consequences, they stop the good people from spontaneously doing good. And so that kind of approach to the design of software, design of communities is really key. And something I think we should see a lot more of.
And can government influence that, do you think? Do they've got any role they can play in that?
They can stay out of the way as much as possible. I think that is really one of the big mistakes that can be made is for politicians to imagine that they know what to do in the world of tech and the world of entrepreneurship, innovation in general. And in general, they don't and they can't, and it's not the right thing. What they should do is what they should be good at, which is make sure that the legal infrastructure is solid and understandable and fair to allow for innovation within that framework, and then get out of the way.
Yeah. And so in particular there was the filtering laws and all those sorts of proposals. That's why you're involved, I guess, is to say, so you realise this is going to get in the way.
Yeah, a lot of that kind of thing is just really technologically incompetent and naive, and it's incumbent on politicians to listen when technologists are telling them actually that won't work. So back to the drawing board. Sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't.
5 years' time, what's Wikipedia? What's going to be different about Wikipedia to now, or the technology that we're using? What's your picture of that?
Yeah, I think so. The two big changes that I would foresee, one will be visible to you and one won't. So the visible change is that the editing environment will become much more like a word processor, become much more user-friendly. Right now, when you click on edit, you get wiki markup language, and it's a bit of a learning curve to learn how to do it. We want to eliminate that barrier. So that is a visible change. The invisible change is what I've talked about already. It'll be invisible to you and me, is the growth of Wikipedia in the languages of the developing world. We probably won't notice when Zulu Wikipedia goes from 200 entries to 200,000 entries, but the people who speak Zulu as their first language will definitely notice, and that's a big change.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Really interesting.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.